What's up, guys? Welcome back to Life Drawing Hair Part 2. So what we're going over today is last week we talked about how to draw hair. We're talking about shapes, simple shapes, what we're thinking when we're drawing hair and what we're trying to avoid, right? And so now we're going to go ahead in and color some of that hair. So you guys know me. I have some references I want to show. When it comes to hair, I prefer a more stylized look at it. So I always refer to more illustrative types of artists, right? But you can see I kind of have a wide variety here. We have something that's very cartoony, something a little more realistic, but definitely stylized, and then something that I would definitely put in the semi-realism category. Those eyes are definitely a little bigger than I would say for realism, but in an overall sense of how it is painted and handled, pretty realistic. Main thing we're looking at here, though, when we're looking at just the hair, if you guys can see, it's done very simply, and it's done with maybe, I would say, no more than like 3 choices of color. Right here, let's look at the one on the right. We have our highlight color, which is like a yellow. We have our base color here, which is like a brown. And then we have our secondary highlight here, which they just did like a nice lighter version of the brown, just kind of to show where the hair is curling or folding. And then, of course, in some shadow spots, they added a 4th color for a little bit of a darker shadow, but maybe not super necessary. But I would say when we're looking at hair, you're trying to generally think, how can I make this simple? I wouldn't go above 4 in terms of color choices. And I put the artist names here on the bottom, by the way, so we get credit for those guys. But you can see here, really, we have 1, 2, and 3, and that's pretty much it. What's going on here is probably just kind of repeated in this muted color here, and of course, like a really sharp highlight. But you just don't want to overdo it. We're really seeing like 4 max. Over here, definitely just 3 colors, and it was done very loosely, very brushy, and that's what kind of gave it that nice puffed out texture, not so like flat to the skull kind of look, right? It has a softness about it, and it really kind of feels like if you put your hand on there, it would have like a bounce, right? And that's achieved with literally two color choices. She went black, and she went with a lightish gray, almost has like a purple tint on there, and just blended it in, and that's simply it. So that's what we're kind of thinking about today. So I did one example already. So if you guys did join in last week, you'll remember this example. And then I also put a gray background on all of these, so that way we can see the color a little bit better. But so anyways, I chose 4 colors, and you can see them up here, right there, right? So those are my 4 swatches that I used over here. And it might not be exact, and I can definitely say that I could go back in this and I can work this much more. But in terms of just trying to get that hair for the relative look, it's already achieved. I probably pushed it further than I needed to, right? So this is the idea that we're going for today. Not complicating it, figuring out how we can do it simply, and just getting us to a starting point where if you guys wanted to, you can of course go back in and add more details, and you can make it look however you want. At the end of the day, it's art, and it's all about the image that you want to tell, not the image I'm trying to show you, right? I'm just giving you a jumping off point. So let's go to our next one and we'll work it together. All right, so I already chose my colors here. I'm going with 3 colors for this guy. So I have my base tone, okay, my highlight tone, which a lot of times people make the mistake of just going pure white or pure really bright yellow for the highlight. Not always necessary. You can already see the contrast between these 2 guys is already great enough that I can discern one is darker and one is lighter. So like you can see, right, one is lighter, one's darker, so you don't need to go full white. It's going to give it a less realistic appearance. And then I needed a shadow color because he does have some darker sections, like you can see up here in his hair and maybe down here where the hair kind of folds under and it's not getting so much light. So we have this color here, which essentially is just a very, very, very dark brown, or you can just consider it a black. But let's go ahead and we're just going to section this off and figure it out. Those are my color swatches. Those are what I'm going to pick from. If you're using color pencils, then you should have the ones that you want to use out. Or if you're using paint, you would have your color swatches there, right? Just like that. And you'd be good to go. So what I'm using right now is a dry media, well, digital brush, because I figure this kind of looks like a color pencil for the most part. And then I'm going to come in with a blending tool after. So if you guys are working with Prismacolors, this should be something pretty similar to what you're trying to achieve with Prismacolors. But anyways, I have my base tone, so I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to color this guy's whole hair with my base tone. So now we have his whole hair colored one color. It looks pretty flat, but honestly, it's pretty good. And this could be like your ending point if you were drawing something a little more simply or cartoony. You can, of course, I know there's hairs that are fraying out and stuff like this, and you see all that stuff, but those are kind of like final touch details that we don't want to try to worry about too much now. You know, we want to try to focus our best on the simple shapes, just like when we're drawing it. It all applies, it all comes back. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick my lighter color here, okay? And I'm going to come in and choose where I want some of that lightness to be going. And this I can be a little sketchy with because, again, I'm going to come in and blend this. And some spots you probably do want it to be sketchy because I think that sketchiness kind of relates itself to the hair texture itself. But not all spots you want it to be so stringy, right? And this is about as far as I'm going to take it. So again, let's kind of look at this from a smaller picture. So it kind of works. It blends in, but I want to push that a little bit further. So I'm going to go ahead and use my dark color here just to get all the colors down that I want and put this in, and then I'm going to come in with my blender tool and we're just going to blend it all together. What I'm trying to see here is the big dark shapes. I don't want to overuse this dark color. I only want to use this dark color in order to accentuate or make very present the hair color that I actually want people to focus on. So now we're going to go over, I'm going to grab my blendy brush. If you guys are using paints, you've probably been blending this whole time already. If you guys are using color pencils, this is when you can grab that blender tool, or you can start coming back and working over with your 3 color selections here. And this is where we just kind of come in and I'm just going to soften up a lot of what I just did so we can have a more solid shape versus something that looks so stringy and all over the place. Now I'm going to come back with my mid-tone color and we're going to push that color around a bit. My goal here with this color is I really want to just kind of make this the most prominent color on my figure here, because this is his hair color, and stuff like where it's getting lighter brown and stuff, that's more like, yes, most hair has like a two tones to it. If you kind of look at it, close enough. Not everyone's hair is usually one solid tone, but um, I just want that to kind of appear more like a highlight kind of feature going on. So I want to push that back. Leave some of it, of course. I like the rough look of it. It gives it that hair look. And now we have to come back. You can see I really pushed my highlights back. So now I'm going to go back, grab my highlight color. And we're going to come in and push that around a little bit with our smearing brush. And then we're going to come back with our hard pencil or outlining tool of like your choice. And then we're going to add some of those hair lines, but we're not going to add a lot. Really, we're just looking for a nice, simple colored in shape with suggestions of hair. I have my highlight color still selected. I'm going to go back and find my pencil-like tool here for you guys. And I'm going to look on my picture and like see where I see all these little highlights. I'm going to decide which ones I want to keep. And those are the ones I'm going to use to kind of add in my sketchy, liney kind of hair structures, okay? Now last thing we can do is we can come in and we can add some of that frayed hair going around the outside. And then we'd be done. And that's as far as we want to push it. You can obviously keep coming back and pushing this further and further, but if you just look at this from a little bit of a distance now, the texture of the hair is 100% achieved, and we don't need to overdo it. Because when you overdo it, what kind of happens is the hair just becomes way too much of an attention grabber. When you look at someone in person, you don't start counting their hairs in your head, you know what I mean? So you don't actually see these things as individual strands, even though we know they are. But you want to just try to show it. You want to give it like the gesture of it, essentially. And this gesture totally accomplishes it. Same thing with those frays in the hair. I put a lot, but I'm not putting all of them. I'm just putting a suggestion of them. Don't overdo it too much or it's going to get too messy in there. And then if this is an actual portrait that you're working on, everyone's just going to be looking here, and whatever you do down here is not going to matter. And so we don't want that, right? We want everything to work together. So I have one more. This one is going to be a more of a simple one with a two-tone color. So I showed you a four-tone. I worked on you with a three-tone, and now we're going to look at Mrs. Model right here. And so I already gave myself the base, right? Because we already worked on hair last time. I got my simple shape in there. I added some curls on there. I was inspired by this. One of my students showed me something that she was working on, and I really liked the hairstyle. So I kind of perused all over Pinterest for this hairstyle. You can see these are going to be my two colors. I already selected them. Black and gray. That's really all that's going on in there, and that's all I need to play around with, and I can show that curly texture very simply. So first things first, just like the last one, we got to color in our shape. So I'm going to go ahead and select my brush and fill it in. Right, so I have my base color filled in, which for this case is black. And now I'm going to grab my lighter color. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm just going to draw these kind of like rounded lines, I would say. So something like this. And I'm going to draw them in just like select locations where I'm kind of copying the image. And And then I'm going to come in with my blender tool, and that's when I'll blend things and make it look a little softer. But for now, we're going to start with our nice and sharp tool, and we're going to add those curls in there. All right, so we added a whole bunch of random scribbles in there. I'm going to come in now with my blender tool, and I'm going to end up probably blending a lot of this out. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in general, when it comes to art, what you don't want when we're trying to get people to look at this picture as a whole, you don't want things scattered here and then here and here and here and here. There's no unity in the picture. So I put them all over because I'm going to blend them in, and I want some sections of the hair lighter, some darker. But I'm only going to keep some of them prominent. I might even just come back and make a few more prominent than I started with, right? So let's get in here and just kind of blend these guys up. Remember to move your tool how you want them to look. So if you want them to look curly, you can move your tool in a curly way, or you can kind of keep going with the curved line. All right, so before I go ahead and blend in with my black, you guys kind of see what I'm talking about now about the unity thing, right? Her hair got kind of a little crazy in there, so I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to push it back now. All right, so there we go. So it's pretty pushed back and blended now. I like it. It doesn't look so ununified. It's all nice and blended in together. And what I kind of went for in my picture, because this picture that we're looking at is pretty evenly lit, right? I kind of went for an idea of like this side is lighter. And then as I went to this side, I slowly had less and less light hitting the hair, right? So you can kind of see that whereas I have a nice lightness here versus here, it's pretty dark. Okay, so now I get to come in with the fun part. I'm going to go back to my dry tool, and I'm going to throw in some of those strands, right? And it should be pretty fun for this kind of hair type because those strands are very curly. So just totally have fun with it. All right, so I drew some dark strands. So I'm going to grab my highlight color and come in with a couple gray strands, and then we're going to call it on this one. All right, guys, that's about it I'm going to do for there. You don't want to go too crazy with those gray strands because then obviously it's going to start looking like gray hair instead of just being highlighted black hair. So don't overdo it, but having fun with it is good too. So let's look at that from a distance. It definitely created that hair texture without having to go for each one of those spotted highlights, which again, that's the point we're trying to achieve. Something simple, believable, realistic. It has that feeling about it. But it didn't take us hours and hours and hours to render, right? All right, guys, so these are the two hairstyles I covered today. Looking about color and shapes. Let me know what you guys want for future videos. I think we talked some about different hairstyles that we can go over, but we're doing a detail series now, so let's move on to something different for next week. Till then, I will talk to you guys later.